Hello and welcome to the revision video for AQA Religious Studies A. This is for the paper 2 paper, which is the themes paper, and we're going to be looking at theme D, which is religion, peace and conflict. Just a couple of admin points before we get started. If there's a pen like this and a piece of paper on the page when I'm talking, then it means that I want you to be writing something down. If you ever see the pause sign, it means that you should be pausing the video. You can pause at any time during the video, of course, if you'd like to. But if you see the pause sign, then you should be pausing the video in order to do something. And if I give you a specific amount of time to do something, it will be because it's an exam question. And for the most realistic practice, you need to use that amount of time to do it. The first thing we need to look at are some keywords. It's really important that you know the keywords for every topic that you're doing in RE, so that you've got access to each one of the questions that you might be asked. All I want you to do as we go through each one of these definitions is to write down the keyword that you think applies to each one. So the first one, armed conflict between two or more countries or two or more groups in one country. Number 2, the absence of war or conflict that leads to happiness and harmony, people not fighting with one another. Number 3, pardoning someone and no longer blaming them for the wrong they have done. Number 4, this means disagreement and can be violent, for example, war. Number 5, when two or more groups of people have become friendly again after they have argued or had conflict. Number 6, this means fairness. It is to make right and fair a situation that has been unfair. Number 7, acts of violence or intimidation against civilians intended to create fear so that governments or organisations do or stop doing a particular thing. Number 8, using actions that can threaten or harm others, for example, crime, war, terrorism or violent protests. Number 9, showing or including violence during a protest, expressing disapproval of something or someone in public. Number 10, this is the Christian theory that war is acceptable if it meets 7 criteria, for example, has a just cause or peace is restored. Number 11, this is a war that is done for the sake of God, it has a religious cause and is controlled by a religious leader. Number 12, acting to prevent harm to yourself or others, it could be a cause of war and violence. Number 13, selfish desire for something like oil, land and power. It is one of the main causes of war. Number 14, deliberately harming someone as a response to them harming you, a revenge. It is a cause of war as well. Number 15, these are weapons that will kill huge numbers of people and destroy large areas. Number 16, these are weapons that work by nuclear reaction that devastate huge areas and kill large numbers of people. Number 17, the belief that war and violence is always wrong. Number 18, these are people or things that have been directly or indirectly affected by war, for example, refugees, child soldiers, or the environment. Number 19, a non-governmental organisation, NGO, founded in the UK that helps the victims of war. Now just grab a different coloured pen or a pencil and mark what you've got for each one of these things. So an armed conflict between two or more countries or two or more groups in one country was war. The absence of war or conflict that leads to happiness and harmony, people not fighting with one another, is peace. Pardoning someone and no longer blaming them for the wrong that they have done is forgiveness. Disagreement, which can be violent, is conflict. When two or more groups of people become friendly again after they've argued or had conflict, is reconciliation. This means fairness. It's to make right and fair a situation that has been unfair, is justice. Acts of violence or intimidation against civilians intended to create fear so that governments or organisations do or stop doing a particular thing is terrorism. Using actions that can threaten or harm others, for example, war, crime, terrorism, or violent protests, is violence. Showing or including violence during a protest, expressing disapproval of something or someone in public, is violent protest. This is a Christian theory that says that war is acceptable if it meets 7 criteria, for example, has a just cause or peace is restored. That's the just war theory. This is a war that is done for the sake of God, it has a religious cause and is controlled by a religious leader, is a holy war. Acting to prevent harm to yourself or others could be a cause of war or violence, self-defence. Selfish desire for something like oil, land and power is one of the main causes of war, is greed. Deliberately harming someone as a response to them harming you, or revenge, is also a cause of war, retaliation. Weapons that will kill huge numbers of people and destroy large areas, weapons of mass destruction, also known as WMDs. Weapons that work by a nuclear reaction that devastate huge areas and kill large numbers of people, and nuclear weapons. The belief that war and violence is always wrong is pacifism. People or things that have been directly or indirectly affected by a war, for example refugees, child soldiers and the environment, are victims of war. A non-governmental organisation or NGO founded in the UK that helps the victims of war is Islamic Relief. It's time now to think about the first one of our key rules. Jesus said you should love your neighbour. This means to be kind and caring towards everyone no matter who they are. I'd like you on your piece of paper to pause the video and answer the question, how might this belief affect a person's view on working for peace? So you could start your answer with, it will make a Christian think that working for peace is good or bad because. Pause the video now and answer the question. The first thing we need to look at is what peace is. As you can remember from our definitions that we've just given, peace is the absence of war or conflict that leads to happiness and harmony. People won't be fighting each other if we have peace. However, sometimes people see war as necessary to restore peace. For example, if a country's leader is cruel and killing innocent people, it may be necessary to go to people with that leader to ensure that innocent people could live in peace. There are various different examples of this happening. The Second World War is an excellent example of people feeling that they have to go to war in order to restore peace across Europe. On your pieces of paper, I want you to try to bullet point 3 different reasons why you think that people should try to work for, to create, or campaign for peace. Try to use religious teachings with at least 2 of the points that you give. If you think back to the first key rule that we had, then that might be a good clue as to where you could start. Write down people should campaign for or work for peace because, and give at least 3 bullet points to answer that question. Pause the video until you have all 3. Here are some ideas that you potentially could have had. Review your answers and add anything to your list that you don't already have. The first thing is that it's a kind thing to do as it aims to stop conflict and war. Jesus said, love your neighbour. War kills people, it harms people, it splits up families. And if you're stopping that, then that is obviously a loving and kind thing to do. The second thing to talk about is another teaching from Jesus. That's the idea that those who create peace will be rewarded by God. Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the peacemakers. This means that those who work towards peace will be blessed by God, and it's something that Jesus approves of. Muslims also aim to be peaceful people. For example, when they greet one another, they say peace be with you, showing that they want to create peace in the world and get rid of any conflict and hatred. Finally, it stops further violence or war so that lives are protected. Muslims and Christians believe that all life is special and valuable as God made it, and so it should be respected and protected from any harm. We can look at the sanctity of life, do not kill unjustly, and if you've killed one person, it's as if you've killed the whole of mankind, to say that that's a good thing. Next, we need to look at reconciliation. This is the idea that 2 people or groups of people become friendly after they've argued or had conflict. So it's really making up for the conflict or the argument that's happened in the past. Try to write down 5 bullet points as we go through this, including 3 religious teachings that would tell us why reconciliation is important. So on your pieces of paper, write down reconciliation is important because, and then just make notes on what I'm going through, including any of the religious teachings that you hear. So first of all, we can say that reconciliation is important because people lose their hatred for someone or a group, and this means that they're then kind to one another, following Jesus' teaching of love your neighbour. When you reconcile, you're forgiving the person, group or country you've had conflict with. Religion encourages forgiveness. In the Quran it says pardon and overlook. Would you not love Allah to forgive you? You can also look at teachings like turn the other cheek and forgive 70 times 7 times from Christianity. Another idea as to why reconciliation is important is that it's encouraged by Jesus. He said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. It shows that you should always be good to everyone, even if they've treated you badly. Persecution, remember, is when a group of people are treated badly, and Jesus specifies that those people who persecute you should be the ones that you're praying for and loving. Finally, we can talk about reconciliation being important because God did so much to reconcile his relationship with mankind. He came as a human and sacrificed himself for the good of people. This shows the importance of reconciliation and how people must make sacrifices and forgive to build any broken relationships with others. They're copying what God has done. Remember that Jesus came as a sacrifice for the sins of mankind, and we can use teachings like, for God so loved the world, he gave his only son, so that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life, and Christ died for our sins in order to show this. It's time for a keywords test. The first keyword that I want you to define is the victims of war. Write down a definition for this now. Victims of war are people or things that have been directly or indirectly affected by war. For example, refugees, child soldiers, the environment. The next thing I want you to think about is whether it's ever okay to be violent. On your piece of paper, make a table like the one that I've got on the screen. On one side, I want you to write down reasons why you think that people should never be violent. On the other side, I want you to write down reasons why you would see violence as sometimes being necessary. Try to give 3 bullet points for each point of view and try to develop all of them with teachings, but at least 2 of them. Think about the key rules and your own ideas from other themes that you've been looking at in order to do this. Pause the video now and wait until you've got 3 things on either side before you move on. Here are some potential ideas that you could have had. If you're missing any of them, make sure you add them to your table as we go through them. So we'll start off with reasons why people should never be violent, which is probably the easiest side of the argument to look on. First of all, life should be valued and protected, not injured and killed through violence. Muslims and Christians believe in the sanctity of life, meaning that all life is special as God made it. Alongside this, we can talk about the fact that it's not kind to hurt people through violence. Jesus said that you should love your neighbour, and violence doesn't seem like a loving or kind thing to do. Finally, people should be forgiving instead of using violence. The Quran says pardon and overlook. Would you not love Allah to forgive you? We could also look at teachings from the Bible, from Jesus, saying turn the other cheek and forgive 70 times 7 times, all of which say that forgiveness is better than violence. On the other side of the argument, saying that violence is sometimes necessary, we could say that we may need to go to war to protect people from a cruel leader like in World War II against Hitler, who was killing millions of people. Muslims believe that the Ummah is one single body, and Muhammad said if one part of it hurts, the rest of it aches in pain, so it should be protected. Obviously, protecting people is also seen as a loving thing to do, so we could refer to teachings like love your neighbour, and Allah is kind and loves kindness in all matters, to justify going to war or being violent in order to protect others. Muslims are also commanded to perform lesser jihad, or holy war. In the Quran it says, fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you. This means that violence could be seen as necessary if it follows the cause of God. Finally, violence can be used to get revenge, for example the death penalty for a murder. The Bible teaches an eye for an eye, a life for a life. And this suggests that the best thing to do if somebody is killed is to kill them as well. It's time to look at another one of our key rules. This one is another Christian key rule, and it is the fact that Christians believe that St. Paul said, "Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit." This means that there is a part of God in everyone, so disrespecting someone is like disrespecting God. I want you to use this teaching to think about the effects of war. What should a Christian's opinion be on war based on this teaching? Use the sentence starter, a Christian should think that war is good or bad because. Pause the video now and answer the question using that teaching. We need to look at violent protests next. If you think back to the definitions that we did at the beginning of the video, violent protests are showing or including violence during a protest when you express disapproval of something or someone in public. So violent protests could include things like rioting and looting as part of the protests. Many people think that there are reasons why they should be allowed and why they shouldn't be allowed. I want you to write down 2 reasons on each side. So think about, first of all, the reasons why violent protests should be allowed. Some people think it may be necessary to protest violently or use violence if it's a loving thing to do. For example, if you're stopping cruelty. This follows Jesus' teaching of love your neighbour. And many people believe that the only way to go against tyrannical dictators and people along those lines is to be violent towards them. It's the only thing that they understand. Violence in these cases could be seen as the most loving thing to do. Alongside this, sometimes violence is needed to get the government to listen to an unfair law so that it can change it. For example, racism. It may be done to create fairness, and the Quran says Allah loves the fair-minded. There are lots of examples of countries where segregation was happening and apartheid, where people actually protested violently in order to try and get the government to listen to them and to change the way that they were treating people within their country. On the other side of the argument, there are lots of people who say that they should not ever be allowed. One obvious reason for this is that violence leads to injury and death of special lives. This goes against the sanctity of life, something that both Christians and Muslims believe in. In the Quran it says, "Take not life which Allah has made sacred." And in the Bible it says, "Do not kill." Both of these suggest that taking a life is absolutely wrong or injuring others. Another reason could be that violence is not the solution, as it only leads to more violence and it destroys peace. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and this means that those who create peace will be rewarded. It doesn't mean that for those who destroy it, people who protest violently. Religions also encourage forgiveness and avoiding violence to bring about justice. Jesus said, "Forgive 70 times 7 times, as well as turn the other cheek and forgive." This suggests that violent protests aren't good, and if you have a grievance with someone, you should really forgive them for it. Finally, it's against the law to participate in violent protests. The Bible says, "Submit to those in authority over you," meaning that you should follow the law as God has put the people in charge in place. If you're protesting violently, then you're going against not only the law, but against God's teachings as well. Another form of violence that we witness around the world today is terrorism. Terrorism is when groups use violence or the threat of violence to achieve their aims, intending to create fear. For example, the 9/11 attacks in America, where 2 planes were flown into the Twin Towers in New York and another into the Pentagon, were done because of political grievances that the perpetrators, Al-Qaeda, had with American policy abroad. Look at the reasons below for and against terrorism. Write them down on your piece of paper and complete each one, telling me why terrorism is wrong or why terrorism could be allowed. Pause the video now and play it again once you've finished completing each one of those speech bubbles. Let's look at the answers that you could have got then. The first one says the Bible allows revenge. It teaches an eye for an eye, a life for a life. This might allow terrorism because terrorists may see it as justifiable that they are attacking another country that has killed their family members or destroyed parts of their country. The next one says that Christians believe blessed are the peacemakers. This shows that terrorism is wrong because it obviously doesn't create peace. Violence leads to more violence, and therefore those people who are committing terrorist acts are not going to be blessed by God. In the Quran it says, "Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you." This could allow terrorism if it's justified along religious grounds. Many terrorists claim to be doing it for a religious cause, and if they are Muslims, they may use teachings like this in order to justify a holy war against those they see as going against Islam. Terrorism targets many innocent people and harms lives. This goes against the sanctity of life, which means that life is special and sacred as it's created by God. Both Islam and Christianity teach the sanctity of life, and it clearly shows that terrorism is wrong. It necessarily uses violence, the threat of violence, or killing people and physically harming them in order to get across its aims. And this goes against a huge number of religious teachings. It's time for another keywords test. What is the definition of pacifism? Write it on your piece of paper now. Pacifism is the belief that war and violence is always wrong. Now we need to start to look at war and why people go to war. On your piece of paper, write down 5 bullet point reasons that you can think of to explain why people go to war. Try to give a brief explanation with each one. Pause the video now and play again once you've got 5 different reasons. Let's review your answers. If you're missing any of these bullet points, make sure that you're writing them down as we go through them. So one reason why people might go to war is to defend and support an ally. An ally is a friendly country, and if that country is attacked, a lot of countries have arrangements to say that they'll go and support their friends. This means that if a country gets attacked, another country may go to war with the attackers of that country. Another reason why people may go to war is to defeat terrorists. If we look at examples of this, the war in Afghanistan, and to some extent the war in Syria, have got lots of foreign involvement because of the fact that Western countries believe that terrorist strongholds exist within those countries. They believe that by helping a particular side to win that war, they will get rid of terrorists and terrorist threats within their own countries. Another reason people may go to war is to gain land. They may know that there are useful resources in other countries' land and may want those resources for themselves. They therefore go to war in order to take over those parts of land and gain the resources for themselves, leading to a more wealthy nation. Another reason could be to fight against cruelty and unfairness. Much of the time, civil war is done against people who are perceived to be cruel and unfair to their people, and the people rise up against them. Equally, many wars have been waged in the past against people who internationally are seen to be cruel and unfair and treating their people unfairly. Another reason why people might go to war is to protect their own country. If they've been attacked, or if they feel like there's a threat of attack, sometimes countries go to war in order to make sure that the people within their own country stay as safe as possible, not allowing others to develop new weapons or to gain too much strength which could put their own people at risk. Finally, some people go to war in order to fight for their religion. When we were looking at terrorism, we looked at the quotation, "Fight in the cause of Allah, those who fight you." But equally, in the past, many other religions have gone to war because they perceive a threat to their own religion. The Crusades are an example of this. Underneath the bullet points that you've just given, list the ones that you think that religious people would agree with and why. Think about what they mean and what teachings you could think up in order to justify each one of them. Pause the video now and play it again once you've written down at least 2 things that you think that religious people would agree with teachings to justify them. For your exam, there are 3 causes of war in particular that you need to know about. These are greed, self-defense, and retaliation or revenge or fighting back. As I go through each one of these, make sure that you write down 1 reason to support it and 1 reason against it in each case. First of all, we'll look at greed. Reasons to support greed as a cause of war could be free will. A person can do as they please. If you want to go to war in order to gain more resources or land, then that seems to be something that you've got the option to do. There are lots of teachings that we can use to support free will. The best one is to look at Adam and Eve and the fact that God gives them a choice as to whether they want to obey him or not. Another reason to support it would be that if people did not fight for resources like oil and land, rich countries would not be nearly as developed as they are today. The reason why so many rich countries have so many interests abroad and so many resources is largely because they've gone to war a lot in the past and go to war still in order to protect their own interests. Reasons against the idea of greed as being a cause for war could be that no religion promotes greed. The Quran, in fact, warns directly against greed. God does not like arrogant, boastful people who are miserly, stingy and greedy. As well as this, it's immoral to kill people out of greed and harm special lives. We could again refer to the sanctity of life, we could refer to do not kill, and other teachings along those lines in order to justify the fact that greed is not a good cause for death. The second one of the causes of war that we need to look at is self-defence. Reasons to support self-defence as a cause of war could be that protecting others is a kind and caring thing to do. Jesus said, love your neighbour, and the Quran says, Allah is kind and loves kindness in all matters. By protecting people, we are being kind towards them, and people would support that. As well as this, it's a just reason to fight in a war that looks after people and yourself. The Quran says, do not kill unjustly, and as long as we have a just cause to go to war, it could be supported by many religious teachings. When we look at the just war theory in a few moments' time, we'll be able to see that self-defence is seen as a just reason to go to war. On the other side of the argument, self-defence could be seen as something which is not a good reason to go to war. Jesus never defended himself through violence. He forgave people instead. He said, forgive 70 times 7 times. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he was arrested, he refused to fight back and told his disciples to put down their swords. Christians try to be as much like Jesus as possible, and by following his example, they wouldn't even go to war for self-defence. As well as this, people still die in the war, and the Bible says do not kill. We could again talk about the sanctity of life, and if you kill one person, it's as if you've killed the whole of mankind. Any teaching which tells us that killing is wrong is going to be a reason against going to war for any reason. War always involves death. Finally, we need to look at retaliation as a cause of war. This means revenge or fighting back against people who fought you. Reasons to support this is that it teaches people a lesson so they don't harm you again. It can put them off. It deters them fighting against you. As well as this, the Bible says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. This suggests that revenge is allowed, and if somebody has fought you, then you should be able to go back and fight them. The other side of the argument to this is that the Bible does not encourage revenge. It says never take revenge, but leave it to the wrath of God. If you want to go directly against the teaching of an eye for an eye, you could say that Jesus said, you've heard it said an eye for an eye, I tell you now, turn the other cheek and forgive. Jesus suggests that revenge is not the way forward, but forgiveness instead. As well as this, matters can be resolved peacefully instead of using violence. A lot of the time in the world today, people use diplomatic solutions which involve no death and no violence, rather than resorting to war, which is expensive both in terms of money and the lives lost. Finally, we've got that idea that violence leads to more violence. If we retaliate against one person for the crimes that they've done to us, then they may retaliate to us, and then we retaliate to them. Gandhi said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, and this is exactly what he's talking about. If we start to think that the way to deal with violence is retaliation, it's only going to lead to more and more retaliation, and probably an escalation in violence and severity in terms of that retaliation. It's time for another keywords test. Write down a definition for a just war. Try to give a couple of examples as well. A just war is a Christian theory that a war is acceptable if it meets 7 criteria, like having a just cause, creating peace at the end of it, and being declared by the government of a country. Next, we need to look at the consequences or effects of war. Here we're going to think about what happens because of war. So write down 5 different things that you can think of that happen as a consequence of war. pause the video now and play it again once you've got 5. Here are some possible ideas that you could have got. Add to the bullet points that you've got if I mention anything that you haven't written down. One consequence of war could be that the country's economy is effective because war damages buildings and weapons are very costly. War is a really, really expensive thing for countries to undertake. Weapons cost a lot, soldiers cost a lot to pay, and the damage done to countries is also very expensive to repair. Another consequence of war could be that the environment is damaged, such as plants, trees and fields. It could also involve the destruction of natural habitats so that animals die. This goes against looking after the world for God, the idea of stewardship. God's created the planet and therefore we have to look after it for him. Another consequence of war could be that hatred is created between countries and groups of people because of all the bloodshed. It can lead to more actions like further war or terrorism as well. A further consequence of war could be death. Many lives are lost, including civilians and soldiers. Obviously, this goes against the sanctity of life and teachings like do not kill unjustly, and if you've killed one person, it's as if you've killed the whole of mankind. Using weapons of mass destruction like chemical weapons can cause deformities and illnesses for generations. In Vietnam, Agent Orange was used as a defoliant and is still causing problems for people living in the areas where it was used today. Finally, another consequence of war could be refugees. Refugees are people who are forced to leave their homes so that they can seek safety and protection elsewhere. This is a massive problem for these people, as they're forced to go to countries where they don't speak the language, leave jobs that they may have had, and leave all of their home and belongings behind. It can also be a problem for the countries that they end up in, as they don't have jobs to employ them or the means to be able to support them properly. For your exam, you also need to know about the concept of holy war. As I go through this, you need to write down 3 bullet points that would define holy war and the conditions that need to be met in order for a holy war to happen. Holy war is a war done for the sake of God. In Islam, this is called lesser jihad. Jihad means struggle. In order for a lesser jihad to take place, there are a number of conditions that need to be followed for it to be considered holy. One is that it is the last resort. All other methods of resolving dispute have been discussed and they've failed. Another one is that civilians, those not fighting, must not be harmed, attacked or mistreated. Another is that crops should be left alone. Holy buildings should not be damaged. Prisoners of war should be treated well. And the final result should be that there is peace. If these conditions are not followed, then the war cannot be considered lesser jihad and is therefore not holy, not something which is done for God. Think about why people might go to war for God. On your piece of paper, try to write down 2 reasons why you think that holy war should be allowed to happen and 2 reasons why people should not be allowed to fight in holy war. Pause the video and play it again once you've got 4 reasons. Add any reasons that you've missed to the table as I go through it. Reasons why somebody might fight in a holy war is that in the Quran it seems to be a command from God. There's a quotation that says, "Fight in the name of Allah those who fight you," which suggests that if somebody's attacking you and you can fight against them in the cause of God, then that's okay. Another reason why people might argue that they should go to holy war is that it can be done to protect the weak and those who are treated cruelly. In the Quran it says, "Do not kill unjustly," and this seems to be a just reason for taking life. On the other side of the argument, we can say that war is never peaceful and always results in deaths and destruction. Muslims are supposed to be peaceful people, and when they greet each other, they say, "Peace be with you." This suggests that holy war is never allowed because it doesn't look at being peaceful. Finally, all wars kill or harm lives. This goes against the idea of the sanctity of life. In the Bible, it says your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and going to war also harms people's bodies and goes against that teaching. Time to look at another one of our key rules. This time we're going to look at the golden rule. Both Muslims and Christians believe in the idea that you should treat others the way that you would like to be treated. I want you to write down on your piece of paper how this teaching might show that war is both right and wrong. Use it first of all to say that war is wrong, and second of all to show that war is right. Pause the video now and answer the question using that teaching. It's time for us to look at our first practice exam question. This is a 5-mark question on terrorism. It says, explain 2 religious beliefs about terrorism referring to scripture or sacred writings in your answer. Now this is a 5-mark question, so we're going to be spending 5 minutes on it. Remember that with a 5-mark question, you need to use your PEE skills, so you need to give a point, some evidence, and explain that evidence. You must refer to religious views in your answer, and you must give at least 1 clear teaching. The easiest way to answer the question is often to give 2 clear teachings in each one of the paragraphs that you give. And remember, the question asks for 2 religious beliefs about terrorism. That means that you need to give 2 paragraphs in your answer. Pause the video now and time yourself for 5 minutes in order to answer this question to the best of your ability. Let's have a look at a possible answer to this question. Remember, the question was, explain 2 religious beliefs about terrorism, refer to scripture and sacred writings in your answer. It's important to remember here that you could have talked about why Christians or Muslims think that terrorism is good, or why they think it's bad. It doesn't matter at all. There's no instruction that the beliefs have to be contrasting or similar. So, here's a model answer. See whether you got anything close to this. Christians think that terrorism is bad because it scares and injures people. The Bible teaches in the sanctity of life, meaning that life is special because God made it. This means that terrorism is bad as it disrespects God's special creation. Some Muslims think that terrorism can be good if it's done in the way of God. The Quran says, fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you. This means that terrorism is good if people are doing it to spread Islam and please God, not for selfish reasons. We can see here that throughout we're using the PEE structure. We're starting off with a clear point, telling me what Christians or Muslims think about terrorism. We're also really clearly saying whether they think that it's good or bad in each case. Then we look at a teaching and we're referring to where that teaching comes from in each case. You need to be as specific as you can be with the teachings that you're giving. Finally, we've got what the teaching means, and in each case, we're referring back to the idea of terrorism. We're referring to the question in our answer, meaning that we're definitely going to be getting the marks. The next thing that we need to look at is just war. This is a war that the Christian Church defines as acceptable. It's a theory first put forward by a teacher called St. Thomas Aquinas, and it goes through various different things that have to have happened in order for a war to be acceptable. Different criteria. It's really important that you remember as many of these criteria as possible so that you can refer to them specifically when writing about it in your exam. If it helps, try to create a mnemonic to help you remember those criteria. Write down 5 bullet points covering what just war is and what the criteria are for each part of it. So, a war needs to be declared by the government of a country. This means that wars declared by individuals or by powerful organisations cannot be seen as being just. This makes a lot of sense in democratic nations where the government is elected by the people. If the government decides to go to war, then it's a pretty safe bet that the people who elected that government would agree with the war that's been gone to. The second criteria is that the cause needs to be just or fair. So, for example, the cause of war can't be that the country wants more land or money. It must be something that could be seen as a fair cause. If you're attacked, or if you're going to the defence of an ally, that could be seen as a just cause. Alongside the cause being just, the intention also needs to be just. So the intention in going to war could be to correct an evil action or to bring about good. It could not be that you feel like your country needs to be bigger and you want to take over more land. Next, we have that the war should be a last resort. All other options before war and violence have to have been tried before you go to war. Another criterion is that there has to be a good chance of success in that war. There's no point in a country going to war if it's obvious that they're going to lose. It will waste lots of valuable life for that country, and it would be for nothing. So you have to make sure that you have some chance of winning before going to war. Next, we have the idea that it needs to be proportional. This means that not many people or innocent civilians are killed, and that the response in the war that you make needs to be in proportion to whatever's been done to you. It would be no good if one warship has been sunk to then bomb a city with 1 million people in it with nuclear weapons. That wouldn't be a proportional response. Finally, the outcome should be peace. It should be that the war aims to make it so that there is no more further violence after it is finished. Create a mnemonic to try to remember each one of these criteria. Mine is, dairy cows in Leeds gobble potatoes only. It's time for us to look briefly at another evaluation statement. This one's about just war theory, and I want you to try and be as specific as possible with the criterion that you could be agreeing or disagreeing with. The statement that we've got to look at is people should be ready to fight in a just war. On one side of your table, I want you to write down reasons why people should fight in a just war, and on the other side, reasons why people should not fight in a just war. Try to give 3 bullet points for each point of view, and develop as many as you can with teachings. Use your key rules and other teachings in order to help you out. Pause the video now and play again when you've got 3 views on either side. Here are some ideas that you could have had on either side of your table. First of all, arguments to say that we should fight in just wars. One of the just war criteria is to go to war to restore peace. Muslims would agree with this because in Islam, Muslims greet one another saying peace be with you, showing that Muslims encourage peace and are peaceful people. Another of the just war criteria is it says that you can fight for a just reason like self-defence. In the Quran it says, do not kill unjustly, which means only kill for a good reason, and self-defence is a fair reason to kill and fight in a war. A just war may be declared by proper authority, and Christians believe that St. Paul said submit to those in authority over you. This means that just war would be okay, because you're submitting to the people who are in the authority in that country. On the other side of the argument, we could also look at reasons why people should not fight in a just war. All wars kill people, whether they're just or not. The Bible says do not kill, and the Quran says if you've killed one person, it's as if you've killed all of mankind. We can also think about forgiveness. Christians and Muslims say that you should forgive rather than going to war against someone. Jesus said forgive 70 times 7 times, and the Quran says pardon and overlook. Would you not love Allah to forgive you? This suggests that rather than going to war in every case, you should be forgiving. Finally, any war causes damage to the country or the area and leads to refugees. This is not kind at all. Jesus said, love your neighbour. And in a hadith, it says, Allah is kind and loves kindness in all matters. These suggest that we should try to be as kind as possible to people, and going to war doesn't seem like a very kind thing to do. Time for another keyword test. Write down the definition of weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction are weapons that will kill huge numbers of people and destroy large areas. The next thing we need to consider is whether religion is the main cause of war and violence in our world today. Write that question down and then draw a table just underneath, on one side saying yes, the other side saying no. As I go through the different ideas that we could have to be able to answer this question, write them in your own words on either side of the table. Pause the video if you need more time to be able to write them down in your own words, and have a look at the teachings that you've got and try to get down as many of them as possible. The first idea that we've got is that most terrorist attacks today are done in the name of religion. For example, the Charlie Hebdo attack in France was done because the magazine published a cartoon mocking the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. 2 men came into the offices of the magazine and killed many people who they saw as being involved in publishing the cartoon and drawing it. They said that this was fighting to defend God and his messenger. Jesus encouraged forgiveness, not violence. He didn't fight back when he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he told people to turn the other cheek and forgive. Religions teach people to care for others, not use violence. Both Muslims and Christians believe in the sanctity of life, the idea that life is special and sacred because God has made it. Islam allows lesser jihad. This leads to a lot of violence, and some people, like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, use it to justify acts of terrorism. The Quran says, "Fight in the cause of Allah, those who fight you." Muhammad teaches, if anyone fights in Allah's path, paradise is assured for him. The next key rule that we need to look at is the sanctity of life. Both Muslims and Christians believe that life is special because God has created it. Only God has the right to end life. I want to know what this teaching shows about the use of nuclear weapons. Write down the sentence starter, "This shows that nuclear weapons are good or bad to use because," and complete the sentence. Pause the video in order to answer the question. A huge thing to consider whenever we're looking at war is how modern war is evolving and the use of weapons of mass destruction. These are weapons that kill large numbers of people and cause great damage. For example, nuclear weapons, which were used for the first time in war during the Second World War in 1945 against Japan. Write down 4 bullet points to say whether nuclear weapons should be used or shouldn't be used, dependent on what I say. The first point to use is that they are a nuclear deterrent. They stop other countries from attacking you if they have them. This is because other countries are so scared that your retaliation will involve nuclear weapons and will kill such huge numbers of people that they stop wars from happening through fear. Another idea is that innocent civilians are bound to get hurt, going against the Quranic teaching, "Do not kill unjustly." You have to look at the fact that they kill so many people as well that the killing is indiscriminate. You cannot justify the killing of that many people because you cannot target the people that you believe deserve to die. So even if some of the killing was just, much of it would be unjust. The just war theory says that killing must be proportional and not too many. Weapons of mass destruction result in large numbers of deaths and therefore would go against the just war theory. Nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction can also be used to threaten other countries and make them act in a certain way. For example, it could stop them from being cruel to their people. However, it could also mean that you're threatening those countries in order to give you things that you think you deserve. They could be a way of exploiting other countries and taking advantage of them. Finally, nuclear weapons are expensive. The money spent on nuclear weapons could be better spent on education and things like healthcare. Thinking about the arguments that we looked on the previous slide, I want you to now give me ideas for and against the use of weapons of mass destruction. For each of the bullet points that you give, try to give teachings to develop them, and if you can, give additional evidence in the teachings that you're using. Pause the video now, and when you've got 3 bullet points on either side of your table, play it again. We'll review some of the ideas that you could have had, and if there are any that you haven't got, make sure you're adding to them. In terms of arguments for the use of weapons of mass destruction, we can use the Quranic teaching of "do not kill unjustly." We could say that weapons of mass destruction could be used to kill people for a just reason, like fighting for God or protecting people from an evil leader. We could also say that potentially retaliating against the use of nuclear weapons would be a just cause for that war. It could be said that they could be used to take revenge. If someone uses weapons on our country, then we should be able to use it on others. In the Bible, it says an eye for an eye. Alongside these ideas, we could look at the idea of nuclear deterrence. If we are using nuclear weapons as a deterrent, then it could mean that actually we're preventing a lot of war, and that's a loving thing to do. It's also saving lives, so it's protecting the sanctity of life. If we look at arguments against the use of weapons of mass destruction, the most obvious is that it harms and kills huge numbers of people. The Bible says "do not kill," and the Quran says if you've killed one person, it's like you've killed the whole of mankind. The more people we kill, the worse it is, and weapons of mass destruction are designed to kill as many people as possible. Alongside this, we can look at the fact that weapons of mass destruction could damage the environment, plants and animals. This goes against the idea of stewardship. The Bible says the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, suggesting that the world belongs to God and we should not destroy it. Examples like Agent Orange, which was a chemical weapon used in Vietnam, shows how much damage we can do to the environment and the long-lasting effects that damage can have. It's time for another keywords test. Write down the definition for justice. Justice means fairness. It is to make right and fair a situation that has been unfair. We've looked at a lot of ideas surrounding war. We now need to think about peace and the fact that pacifism is the belief that violence and war is always wrong. I want you to try to think about that and think about why people may become a pacifist. It may be that you choose to use religious teachings, but it may also be that you choose to use just sensible arguments that would say that war is the wrong thing to do. Pause the video now and play it again once you've got at least 4 reasons. Review the ideas that you've got and add any bullet points to yours if you haven't got them. The first point that we can give, and the most obvious one, is the fact that war involves killing, and this goes against teachings like do not kill, and if you've killed one person, it's as if you've killed the whole of mankind. That would support pacifist principles, because if you're not going to war, you're less likely to kill people. War also harms or kills people, and this goes against the idea of the sanctity of life, the idea that life is special and sacred because it's been created by God. People may also be pacifists because they believe that problems can be solved through talking and negotiations rather than fighting. This tends to be the way that a lot of countries go nowadays, and they may impose diplomatic sanctions on other countries rather than going to war with them. War also causes a lot of damage to the environment, and this goes against the idea of being a steward, which is to look after and care for the planet on behalf of God. Finally, Jesus was arrested unfairly and also beaten, but he did not fight back. Christians would say that they would follow his example as he is God incarnate, God in human form. What better example have you got to follow than this? We also need to look at religious individuals who've worked for peace. Many religious people have tried to work for peace in the past. You need to know in detail about at least one of them for the exam. I want you to write down 3 bullet points for each of the 2 that I'm going to talk about. The first is Irene Sendler. During the time of the Nazis, she worked for peace by offering Jewish people food and shelter, the Jewish people persecuted in Nazi Germany and other Nazi-occupied areas. She created over 3,000 false documents so that Jewish families could avoid arrest. And she gave Jewish children a fake identity to live safely with Polish parents. By doing these things, she saved a huge number of lives. Gandhi is a very famous political activist. When there was unfair British rule in India, he worked for peace by using non-violent ways to create peace, like doing peaceful protests, marches and hunger strikes. The most famous of these was the Salt March. He refused to pay the salt tax to the British and encouraged others to do the same. This led to huge problems for the British in order to try and get people to pay a tax that they felt they deserved. He also became leader of a party that worked to give India independence from Britain, so he used political methods in order to try to work towards peace. Time for another one of our key rules. This one is an Islamic rule, and it's the idea that the Ummah is one single body. This is the belief that all Muslims are part of one brotherhood and one community. They need to look after one another. Muhammad, peace be upon him, said they are like one single body. If one part of it hurts, the rest of it aches in pain. Why do you think that this would mean that a Muslim should work for peace? Pause the video and use the sentence starter. This means that a Muslim should work for peace because. It's time for another exam question. This time we're going to look at a 4-mark exam question, and this is on holy war. 4-mark exam questions are always going to be of the format, explain 2 similar or 2 contrasting religious beliefs about something. In this case, we're looking at 2 similar religious beliefs about holy war. Remember that when the question says similar, we need to give 2 points of view on the same side of the argument. So 2 that agree or 2 that disagree. If the question says different or contrasting, then we need to give arguments on opposite sides. Because this question says similar, it means that both reasons need to say that it's good or both reasons say that it's bad. You can refer to any religion in this question because there's no specification, but do remember that with form-out questions, it could be the case that it tells you to refer to the main religious tradition of Great Britain and one or more other religious traditions. If that is the case, you need to refer to both Christianity and Islam in your answer. Finally, you need to use PEE skills in order to answer the question. You've got 4 minutes to do this one because it's a format question. Pause the video now and give yourself 4 minutes to answer it as well as you can. Here's a possible answer that you could have got to that question. Explain 2 similar religious beliefs about holy war. Muslims think that holy wars are good because you can do it to protect innocent people. In the Quran it says, "Do not kill unjustly." This means that holy wars are good because it's fair to kill cruel people to protect the weak. Also, Muslims think that holy wars are good because it's done for the sake of God. The Quran says, "Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you." This means that holy wars are good because God has commanded it, and so there must be a reward for Muslims. We can see a really clear PEE structure used here, starting off with what religion the belief belongs to, what view that religion is likely to have, then a teaching that justifies the view given, and a clear meaning to that teaching, which comes back to the idea of holy war in each case. Make sure that your answer does this, and also make sure that both of the views that you have got are about the same side of the argument. Here we can see that we've got 2 views that say that holy war is good. If you've written 2 views that say that holy war is bad, you might have used "do not kill" in one of your paragraphs and the sanctity of life in another one, then that's absolutely fine. The last thing we need to look at are who the victims of war are and whether they should be helped or not. The first thing that I want you to think about is what a victim of war is. It's people who are harmed and suffer as a result of war. On the screen there are a few pictures of different groups of people or different things that could be considered to be victims of war. On your sheet of paper, write down "there are many victims of war, such as," and use the pictures and your own ideas to list as many different victims of war as you can. Here are some of the victims of war that you might have got. Add any extra ideas to the list you've already got. The first one we could talk about is soldiers. Now it might seem like they don't look like a victim of war because they're often the people who are perpetrating war, but actually soldiers die, soldiers have families, and soldiers are people undertaking orders. So we could definitely see them as being victims of war, and often the largest number of people killed during wars. Another group of victims of war could be child soldiers. These tend to occur in countries that have been at war for a long time or are undergoing civil war, where lots of the people who would be fighting otherwise have already been killed. Children are taken from their families and forced to fight for a particular side and commit atrocious acts. Another group of victims could be the families of deceased soldiers and the families of others killed during war. We could definitely see those who are left behind as being victims because of the pain and anguish it causes them to have lost a loved one. Another thing that we could refer to as a victim of war is the environment. Often the natural environment and animals around are killed and destroyed because of the destructive methods used during war. Another group of victims is refugees. These are people displaced and forced to leave their homes because they're no longer safe in the country that they live in. This could very well mean that they're forced to live in foreign countries that are unable to provide for them and therefore live in much worse conditions than they had before. Finally, we can look at victims of chemical war. One example of this is those victims of Agent Orange in Vietnam. This has led to multiple children being born with deformities because their parents lived in the area where Agent Orange was used as a chemical defoliant during the Vietnam War. This group of victims seems particularly unfair, given that the war is no longer going on and hasn't been going on for decades, but people are still falling victim to the methods used during that war. Underneath your ideas, write down which victim of war you feel the most sorry for and why. We've looked at who the victims of war could be. Now we need to think about why we should help them. Write down 4 different reasons as to why we should help the victims of war. If you can, include religious teachings in your answer. Pause the video now and write the reasons down that you need. As we review these different ideas, add any extra ones that you didn't get. So we should help the victims of war because it's kind to help people that are suffering, and Jesus taught, love your neighbour. It also says in a hadith, Allah is kind and loves kindness in all matters. As well as this, we have the idea that you have to care for people that need help to survive during a war. Muslims believe that everyone is part of one ummah, which is like one body. If one part of it hurts, the rest of it aches in pain. Everyone could be seen as having a duty to protect lives. The sanctity of life shows that life is special because God made it. And finally, it saves lives. In the Quran it says, if you save a life, it is like you have saved all of mankind. There are many religious organisations that help victims of war. The one that we're going to look at in a little bit more detail is Islamic Relief. As I go through the information on this, write down 4 bullet points about it so that you could write about it in your exam. Islamic Relief is a non-governmental organisation, an NGO, which was founded in the UK. They want to look after and help people as they believe in the sanctity of life. They aim to give justice and stop unfairness because they believe that the Quran says, when you speak, speak with justice, even if it goes against someone close to you. Work that they do could involve providing food, water, medical assistance to those affected by war. They write letters to governments, like the UK government, to take in and support more refugees. And they started a campaign called Cake for Syria, delivering cake to people's doors for a £10 money donation. The money went towards supporting refugees. It's time to look at another one of the teachings that we should be able to use in our exam. This one's an Islamic one and it comes from the Quran. It says, pardon and overlook, would you not love Allah to forgive you? This encourages forgiveness, and it means that if we want God to forgive us, we should be forgiving towards others. I want you to write a sentence telling me why this might mean that Muslims should not go to war due to retaliation. Use the sentence starter on the screen and pause the video to answer the question. The last thing that we need to do is to look at some specific religious teachings that you're going to be able to apply across this topic. Write down the ones that you think you're least likely to remember so that you can revise them and recall them in your exam. As we go through, pause the video whenever you need to in order to write down the teaching, but make sure you give the meaning with it. We'll start off with Islamic teachings. The first one is from the Quran and it says, be just, for it is closest to righteousness. This means that a person is on the right path to heaven when they are fair and just towards others and ensure that others are fair. We can look at this in terms of ensuring that justice is restored when going to war with other countries, and that being a good thing. In Islam, Muslims greet each other saying, peace be with you. This means that Islam encourages peace and Muslims should be peaceful people. In the Quran it says, if you save a life, it's like you've saved all of mankind. This means that there is a huge reward in saving just one person, as in the eyes of God, it is like saving everyone. The Quran says, fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you. This means that a Muslim should fight in a war if they believe that it will please God and He will reward them for it. The Quran says, if you have killed one, it's as if you have killed all of mankind. This means that even killing one person is a very big sin in Islam and is as bad as killing everyone. Now it's time to look at some Christian teachings. Again, write down the ones that you don't think that you'll remember and make sure that you're revising them and recalling them for the exam. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. This means that those who create peace and work towards peace will be rewarded by God. Jesus also said, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. This means that you should be ready with weapons to use to fight if and when it becomes necessary. The Bible says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it." This means the earth belongs to God, so people need to care for it. We can link this to war by looking at the fact that war often destroys the environment and lots of things that God has created for us. In the Bible it says, "Never take revenge, but leave it to the wrath of God." This means that people should not fight back, but let God deal with those who are bad to them. It goes against the idea of retaliation as a cause of war. And finally, Jesus said, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." This means that you should try to make amends, reconcile with people you dislike, and forgive them even if they are bad to you. The final thing that we need to do is our last exam practice question. This is a 12-mark question, so it's an evaluation statement that we need to look at. You get 15 minutes to do one of these, and you need to make sure that you're looking at both sides of the argument. The statement that we're going to look at is religion is the main cause of war and violence today. Remember, you need to use Peel paragraphs in your reasons. If you can give additional evidence and make it into a Peel plus paragraph, that would be ideal. You need to give religious teachings to support as many of your points as possible, and you need to look at both sides of the argument. You must make sure that the points you're giving clearly answer the question by linking them to the statement. Use the words in the statement at the end of your answers in order to make sure that that is as clear as possible. Aim to give 2 Peel plus paragraphs and 2 normal Peel paragraphs in your answer. Pause the video now and give yourself 15 minutes to answer the question. Here's a potential model answer that could use some of the same ideas that you have in yours. Pay special attention to the structure that's being used here and how clear it is what each one of the teachings means and why it links to the question. Remember that the question is, religion is the main cause of war and violence today. A strong argument to agree with the statement is religions promote violence. For example, the Quran says, "Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you." This means that Muslims are commanded to go to war for the sake of God. Additionally, Jesus said, "If you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one." This implies that you need to be ready to fight when the need arises. Therefore, religion is the main cause of violence and war because it's an obligation for some religious people to fight in lesser jihad and be equipped with weapons to use them when necessary. Nevertheless, one may disagree because there are many religious teachings stressing the importance of being peaceful, not violent. Muslims greet one another saying "peace be with you," meaning they want to spread peace and a peaceful people. As well as this, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," suggesting that those who create peace are rewarded by God. Therefore, religion cannot be the main cause of war and violence because Muslims frequently use the greeting in order to create love and get rid of hatred, and Christians also understand that being peaceful pleases God, getting them closer to heaven. Let's just make sure that we understand what's going on in these paragraphs. First of all, we need to look at the fact that we're making a very clear point as to which side of the argument we're on, whether it agrees or disagrees with the statement. The next thing that happens is that there's a simple explanation as to why you would agree or disagree. Then we start to look at the evidence behind it. We've got a very clear idea of what religion it belongs to and the teaching given. There is also, every single time, a meaning given with each one of the quotations. The really good thing that's happened here is that we've got additional evidence to back up the same point that we're giving. So as well as this, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." One thing to notice is that this directly goes with the idea that we've given previously, that there are many religious teachings stressing the importance of being peaceful, not violent. It's important that our additional evidence supports the same point that we're giving in our original point. Finally, we can see that there's a very, very clear link at the end of the statement. We can see that it's referring back to words in the statement of religion not being the main cause of war, and it summarises the arguments that we've already given, making it really clear as to why they would agree or disagree. You could also try to evaluate the argument that you've given by saying something along the lines of, "This is a really strong argument because there are multiple pieces of evidence from both religions suggesting that being peaceful, not violent, is the way forward, and therefore religion can't be a cause of war and violence in the world today."